Social perception is the processes by which people come to understand one another. So it's how society perceives one another. I perceive you a certain way and you perceive me a certain way. Self-perception theory is when people infer what they think or how they feel about observing their own behavior and the situation in which that behavior takes place. So if I perceive myself, I would be observing my own behavior, looking at my own actions and thought processes based upon certain situations that I place myself in or find myself in, and I would infer information or deduce information based upon, or a conclusion, should I say. I would deduce a conclusion based on the information that I obtained. Self-concept is the sum total of beliefs that people have about themselves. So if I conceptualize myself, then I'm actually looking at all of the beliefs that I have, Christian and non-Christian views, everything about me and my beliefs to create a sum total to find out how I conceive myself. And introspection is how you would look inward at one's own thoughts and feelings. So it's pretty much you are inwardly inspecting yourself, looking at your own thought process, your own feelings, concerns, and drawing a conclusion based on that information. Self-perception with award and punishment. So if I perceive myself to be a certain way when I'm acting, I'm not an actor, but if I was an actor, I would act a certain way. I would be getting paid to be angry, to be happy, to be whatever the script defines that I need to be. So these are not actions that I'm actually normally would portray, but because I'm getting paid, I would display that action or that thought process. Now, if I was getting punished for something, me personally, I'm not going to change the way I view myself or portray myself, but there are many people who, when they go to court and they're going to get punished for something, they portray themselves to be something they're not. So this perception can be can actually be somewhat of a lie. It's deceptive. It's not true. Doesn't really display who that individual actually is. Self-perception of emotions. So it has been researched in the textbook where it verifies that if you smile, that you actually start feeling better through your smile. Your emotions can change based off of your facial expressions. So individualism and collectivism is both aspects of self-perception. There are certain individuals that are reared a certain way, who will display certain characteristics about themselves. And usually from what the research has verified, people in the United States, Australia, Great Britain, Canada, Netherlands are the main countries, but I'm sure there are other ones. They display aspects of being more independent, working alone, self-reliant, more considering themselves than their community. Collectivism is the opposite. So these individuals would be more concerned about the community, more concerned about, I wouldn't say concerned, but they are just reared to be around their community, around their family, around their friends. They're more interdependent. They are more cooperative, displaying more of a socially harmonic characteristics. And these individuals are, through verifiable research, live in Venezuela, Colombia, Pakistan, Peru, Taiwan, and China. Inner disposition is the stable characteristics of an individual, such as personality traits, attitudes, and abilities. And they are usually inferred based, they can only be inferred based upon what that individual says or does. So if I display a certain disposition about myself or certain characteristics of myself, then they would be based off of my personality, my attitude, my abilities, certain things that I say and do that the perceiver would receive. Attribution theory. It's a group of theories that describes how people explain the causes of behavior. So this is just a hypothesis or a theory that displays the causes of behaviors. It explains people's behaviors. And then there are certain attributions that are personal and certain ones that are situational. Yeah, personal attributions are based on an individual's characteristics, abilities, personality, mood, and effort. So if I display certain attributions that or certain characteristics that actually attribute me to being angry or being unhappy and moody all the time, then those attributes, they're internal and people see them. So that is how they would describe me. They would be my attributions. Now, there are situational attributions that are external as well, based off tasks or different things you actually are doing. Other people can change your attributes, and luck, although I don't personally believe in luck. So I stated fate through faith because nothing is by chance from what the Bible says. Everything is through faith, and then if those that don't have any faith or little faith, then it would still be fate based upon what God chose to happen to you. Impression formation. It's the process of integrating information about a person to form a coherent impression. So if I have a certain impression about myself, this is information that has been gathered by the perceiver that has allowed that perceiver to define me as a certain way. The information integration theory is the impressions formed of others based on integration of personal dispositions, current state of perceiver, and the weighted average of the target person's characteristics. So you have to look at all aspects of this information that's being gathered, and you have a perceiver who is looking at the situation a certain way depending upon the perceiver and his thought process or her thought process. And then you also have the actual individual that's being perceived, and they have certain dispositions about them, certain information and impressions that they are giving off, and then also that the person's characteristics. So looking at all aspects of all the information that's gathered, you have this theory of information integration. Implicit personality theory is a network of assumptions about relationships among various types of people, traits, and behaviors. Then you have confirmation biases, it's tendencies to interpret, seek, and create information in ways that verify existing beliefs, and belief perseverance, the tendency to maintain beliefs even after they have been discredited. So all these are different aspects of self-perception. The ultimate goal is to have the self-fulfilling prophecy, which is going to lead all of the information that has been obtained to actually behave in a way that's going to confirm the expectation of the perceiver. So it's like the actual reality of the individual. So you have a perceiver that has expectations of a person. They've observed the person. and received information through observation, conversation, and because of all the information gathered, they have certain expectations from that person, certain mannerisms that they're going to just going to have, and then the perceiver is going to behave in a manner that is consistent with those expectations. So the perceiver, of course, they have their own way of living and their own way of perceiving themselves and, of course, being perceived. And then you have the target who, that other individual that the perceiver is actually examining or judging, should I say. The target unwittingly adjusts their behavior according to the perceiver's action. So, the receiver is acting a certain way based off of the knowledge that they received. And then that particular individual is going to as well act a certain way based off of how the perceiver is acting. And all this information and all the information that's gathered from the perceiver and as well from the other individual, they're all working together to actually create a reality of this interaction and relationship. Social comparison theory. So this is when you have society that's actually comparing each other. You have your own perceptions about yourself, and then there are certain perceptions that you have towards other people, and you're comparing yourself to those other people. So, and then these actual comparisons are based on opinions and one's own abilities as well as the abilities of others. And as a person's personal opinions and abilities, as your own opinion and ability actually increases and you start having more positive opinions about yourself and your abilities increase, then your desire to compare yourself to someone else will actually decrease. You don't have to feel the need to do better based off of someone else when you're doing better for yourself. Self-evaluation is so this is whenever you're comparing yourself to someone who is very similar in standards to you. Their viewpoints are somewhat similar. So this actually helps you to evaluate your own self based off of someone similar to you. Self-enhancement is when you're comparing yourself to someone that actually has lower views than you. They have lower standards than you. And those lower standards, whenever you're comparing yourself to that other individual, is going to enhance yourself. It's going to help you to become a better person. Now, self-improvement is actually whenever you're comparing yourself to someone who has higher views to you. So you look at this person as a role model, someone that you want to be, certain characteristics and beliefs they have that you want for yourself. And this is going, to help you strive to become a better individual, more improved in abilities and beliefs. The culmination of all the information that has been presented gives you the processes of social perceptions. You have this perceiver who is judging or looking at other individuals, and they're observing these people and the situations these people are in and the behaviors that they are portraying. And there's certain attributions that are going to come from all this observation. And then those attributions are going to then give that perceiver certain idea of how that person is disposed. And then all this information is integrated together to give off an impression. And then once you have an impression of the individual, then you have to go back to the perceiver to see if, to confirm their perception. Because again, you have your own self perception, and then you have the perceiver that's also perceiving how the individual is, and then to get confirmation of that, all this information, you have to go back to the perceiver. The two questions that I have posed. So if an American child was raised in Asian countries such as China, how would the cultural difference affect the American child into their adulthood? The second question is, how could those values that were instilled into the child affect them spiritually through, based upon what your knowledge is concerning the Bible